Okay, we're doing part 8, book review of this book right here, The Cancer Resolution by Mark Lintern. We're covering pages 172 to 205 today. First line is that several lines of recent evidence suggest that major pathology associated with asbestos-related mesothelioma cancer of the pleura in the lung and the chest is related to local iron overload. Iron overload suppresses the immune system. Chemotherapy can increase levels of free iron. One study showed 70 patients with acute leukemia had raised levels of transferrin saturation beginning at 50 to 59% before treatment that went up to 96% after treatment with chemo, which makes sense. When a cell lyses, it's going to release some free iron. It's transferrin molecules that bind 4,500 molecules of iron are going to release that into the blood, so the free iron in the blood is going to go up. The reason, in a sense, it suppresses the immune system is dormant bacteria can't become active until they got iron. That's why the body sequesters iron. So when you have increased free iron availability, those dormant bacteria can be reactivated. For example, same thing with fungi. Okay, and I got the page numbers for all this stuff in the book. Excessive lactic acid accumulation feeds microorganisms and suppresses immune function. Lactate inhibits monocyte migration and the release of cytokines like tumor necrosis factor and interleukin-6. Lactate strongly inhibits the activation of T cells and also inhibits NK cell function. So when cells are running anaerobic glycolysis, one of their waste products that they pump out of the cell is lactate. Hypoxia favors running anaerobic glycolysis. So hypoxia favors the tumor environment. Also, the lactate plus the hydrogen proton pumped out of the cytoplasm of the cancer cell produces an acidosis of the extracellular matrix. So acidosis also favors tumor growth because acidosis suppresses immune function. That's the point of all this. So you want to avoid things that cause acidosis. What causes acidosis? Well, animal protein, animal food is going to cause some acidosis because it's going to be high in fat. The fat causing chylomicrons, triglycerides, LDL cholesterol elevation is going to cause some localized, and blood sludge, rouleau formation is going to cause some localized tissue hypoxia. Okay, that's number one. Number two, the animal protein itself has more methionine, partly metabolizes sulfuric acid, leading to some mild metabolic acidosis. Extra sodium chloride, the chloride displacing bicarbonate, that causing some localized metabolic acidosis. That's also all going to contribute to acidosis. Acidosis suppressing immune system favoring the cancer cell. Okay. Next thing here. Get myself out of the way. We found that through this process that none of the cancers were sterile. We were finding microbial DNA and RNA in every cancer type. By the way, Lintern thinks that cancer cells are weakened cells that get taken over by an opportunistic infection, most typically from fungi, that causes the cancer to grow more. Okay, that's his theory. So it's something superimposed on the Warburg theory. Over the past 5 years, researchers have shown cancer tissue contains entire communities of bacteria and fungi. Okay. Most well-studied human viral, bacterial, or protozoan intracellular pathogens induce a Warburg-like effect or metabolic process upon their infection of a cell. These pathogens hijack normal host cellular metabolism in order to redirect glycolysis and mitochondrial TCA cycle intermediates towards the biosynthesis of lipid droplets, fatty acids, and amino acids and nucleotides that are required for their own nutritional and survival needs. So what he's basically saying is the opportunistic infection by the fungi takes over the cell and changes its metabolic cycle so it can steal the cancer skeleton intermediates to use to make a copy of itself so it can grow, so the cancer can grow. Tissue damage is a precursor to the Warburg effect. And I just mentioned here in comment, I got the brackets around it. With aging, people have increased iron overload, hypoxia, loneliness, a form of psychological stress, and decreased immune function and decreased sleep. All those things favor cancer growth. And then he says more research should be done about the tumor mycobiome. So that's kind of a little bit of a trick word there. Myco means fungus. So what he's sort of saying here is that it looks like all these cancers are infected, and most commonly by a fungus. And he thinks that's causing suppression of the cell's normal behavior and making it behave to serve the fungus. It is possible, said Ravid Strassman, cancer researcher, that fungi are somehow aiding the tumor to form or grow. Bits of data here and there showed that fungi correlated with the worst or the bad prognosis cancers. Here's something about the cancer cell type distribution. These are sort of like one way to look at cancer. Sort of you can put it into 5 cell types. Carcinomas, so that's of epithelial cells, cells that line a tube like the intestinal tract, the blood vessels, the bile duct, okay? 85% of cancers are epithelial cells. And those are the ones that have first contact with a fungal infection. Lymphomas are 5%, that's cancer of the lymph nodes. Brain cancer is 3%, they're behind the blood-brain barrier. Leukemia is 3%, sarcoma is 1%. So given that epithelial cells are the body's early line of defense against fungal infections, is it just a coincidence that the cells most at risk of fungal infection end up causing 85% of cancers? He makes the point, why don't we get more muscle cancers? They're often hypoxic, but they're less than 1% of cancers. You almost never see them. Almost never. I see many thousands of cancers. I almost never see a cancer in a muscle cell. Okay, if random DNA damage was the cause of cancer, wouldn't we expect a more even distribution or spread of cancer amongst different cell types? That's a good point. So anyways, that's it for today. Hope you found that helpful.